Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football late Sunday night. I just think some fascinating news for us Michigan fans coming out as Biff Poggi rejoining this Michigan staff heading into 2025, going to be his third stint with the program. And look, this is not going to be a huge national media storyline. This is not going to be a storyline that we wake up on Monday morning, we see a breaking news banner on ESPN that Biff Poggi's heading back to Ann Arbor. For the Michigan fans who follow this program pretty damn closely, I think y'all know the value that Michigan is getting with Biff Poggi. Now, I think a lot of Michigan fans first think about the impact we're going to get on the recruiting trail. I don't think there's a figure in the sport of football that has bigger ties and bigger influence on the state of Maryland and the city of Baltimore than a guy like Biff Poggi. I think that's probably where it starts. And we're going to talk about the impact he's going to have on the recruiting trail. I think where I want to start here is the impact he has on this Michigan culture. You know, you go back to Biff Poggi and when he joined this Michigan staff, think back that 2020 year during COVID, where it just seemed like this Michigan program was lost. There were a lot of question marks about the future of Jim Harbaugh's tenure within this Michigan program. You add Biff Poggi to the staff following that 2020 year, and all of a sudden Michigan had, at least in my opinion, one of the best cultures that we saw in all of college football. The last couple of years beating Ohio State, Big Ten championships, obviously ultimately ending in a national championship. I'm not saying Biff Poggi was 100% responsible for it, but just listen to how Jim Harbaugh talked about Biff Poggi. Listen to how Sharon Moore talks about Biff Poggi from a culture standpoint. That's probably what excites me the most. And you start diving into his background and say fundamentally changing young athletes' lives during his time as a high school head football coach at St. Francis Academy. For the people who know the background of Biff Poggi, there's not many better dudes in the sport, in my opinion, than Biff Poggi. And him coming back to Ann Arbor, I think, has a much greater effect on this Michigan program than just what he can provide on the recruiting trail. Now, I think there's three aspects that he's going to really help with this Michigan program. Want to get into those. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and to the Michigan fans who've been rocking with the fellas for the last couple of weeks, talking the portal, talking the high school recruiting trail. Can't thank you guys enough. Ty Haywood making his decision pretty dang soon. Hoping this Michigan commitment sweatshirt stays on for that time. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Let it fly in the comments section. I would love to hear how the Michigan fans are feeling about this move as well. Without further ado, let's get into it. I want to start with this. One of the values, or I guess one of the bigger values that Biff Poggi is going to bring to this Michigan program is kind of being a consultant to head coach Sharon Moore. Why do I think this is so important? One, he was a massive consultant with Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh was very vocal. I didn't make many decisions about this Michigan program without talking to Biff Poggi. I look at it and say Sharon Moore. One of the risks about hiring Sharon Moore after Jim Harbaugh was he's green. You know, he's never really been a head football coach in that full capacity. Obviously, was an interim head coach when Jim Harbaugh was suspended, but managing a football program 12 months of a year as the head guy, especially when you're talking about a program like Michigan, there's not many bigger jobs in the country. Bringing in a for lack of better terms, consultant that Sharon Moore can lean on, similar to how Jim Harbaugh leaned on in terms of making some decisions that impact this Michigan football program. I think that makes sense. In his time at Charlotte, although not a successful head coach, only won, I believe, 6 games down there, I think that's going to even further help Biff Poggi be that consultant for Sharon Moore, because now Biff Poggi has experience running his own program. Hey, I made a lot of, I'm sure he says I probably made a lot of mistakes during my time as the head football coach at Charlotte. Probably learned from some of those mistakes too. Sharon Moore having that right-hand man to lean on in terms of some of the decisions that he wants to make within this Michigan program, I think that's probably where it starts. Number 2, culture. And again, when I go back and look at Biff Poggi's time at Michigan, that's what stands out to me the most, right? This Michigan team in 2020 it fell off, right? And not only on the football field, but it fell off in terms of leadership in the locker room. the culture that was within this Michigan program. You inject Biff Poggi, and all of a sudden in 2021, 2022, it felt different. And again, am I crediting Biff Poggi 100% for the culture turnaround? No. But am I giving him certainly his flowers? Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not saying Michigan had a culture problem in 2024, but I'm saying, hey, Biff Poggi's only going to help this going into 2025. Last one, and arguably the biggest one, is what he can do for Michigan on the recruiting trail in the DMV area in the state of Maryland. You take a look at the talent that is coming out of Maryland, not only in the 2026 class right now, but largely just in general. The DMV area puts out a ton of really good football players that have a ton of success. Just look at the Michigan program, right? Blake Corum coming from St. Francis Academy. Jay Sean Barham, St. Francis Academy. Kai Hill Green. Derek Moore came from St. Francis Academy. Michigan gets a lot of really good football players from this region. Biff Poggi, again, I don't think there's a guy that has more influence in the state of Maryland from the city of Baltimore than Biff Poggi at the high school ranks. This is going to allow Michigan to really dig their teeth in to this region on the high school recruiting trail. When you look at it in 2026 alone, I mean, the state of Maryland, 3 guys that are in the top 50 nationally, 2 guys who are in the top 5 nationally, and edge rusher Zion Neely and offensive tackle Emmanuel Echano, who is incredible as a football player. Does this help Michigan get in it for a couple of these guys? It certainly doesn't hurt, especially with a guy like Zion Neely, who's from St. Francis Academy. And so one of the things that excites me the most is, yeah, you're getting a really good consultant. You're getting a really good guy that has proven to really provide some good culture to the program. And then number 3, a massive asset on the recruiting trail. And that's one of the things that we're most excited about the Sharon Moore era, is it feels like Michigan is going to operate a little bit differently on the recruiting trail. It's going to, the way I'd probably frame it is, Michigan is maximizing itself in terms of what it can be as a recruiting program. It felt like, look, player development culture under Jim Harbaugh, especially the last couple of years, it didn't get much better. It never felt like Michigan maximized itself on the recruiting trail. And if you want to sustain dominance in college football, if you want to compete for national championships every single year, you know you have to recruit a little bit better. I think Sharon Moore knew that. The recruiting feels different. Biff Poggi getting added to this Michigan staff is going to be a massive asset on the recruiting trail as well. Again, I don't think it's going to be massive news nationally. I think for a lot of Michigan fans who follow this program, this is really, really big for Michigan. And just from a personal note, there's not many coaches in the sport that I like and respect and think of higher than Biff Poggi. We'll see how the impact plays out. I think we'll see an immediate impact on the recruiting trail. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.